Okay, YouTube, this is going to be part 2 for the Walther P-38 disassembly. I have the first video up for the fully disassembling the slide. Now I'm going to fully disassemble the frame. I had some good responses to the slide disassembly video, and I'm starting to get a lot of comments and requests for the frame. And I got a message from one guy last night. I'm sorry, I forget his name, but he asked me several times that he really appreciated that one, but he needs to figure out how to take the frame apart. So I'm going to do that really quick. I apologize up front. This is going to be a long, probably boring video of a frame disassembly. And unfortunately, I do not know all the names for this. I've only done this disassembly a few times. It's going to be a little wonky, and I apologize if I stumble and mess up a couple times. But I'm going to try and do this with as little editing as possible, and I'm going to try and get this this video done as quickly as possible. So instead of keep rambling, we're going to go ahead and take the magazine out. Go ahead and flip the lever here. Drop the slide. Drop the hammer. Slide is off. Okay, moving right into it. We're going to disassemble the grips. Take the grip screw out. Remember, use a good screwdriver bit that fits in there really good. That's a small screw. You don't want to mess that up. Pop off the plastic grip. Pop off the other one. Alright, we're in business. Now, I do not know the best order in which to take this thing apart. I do not know necessarily all the names of what they're called. And again, I apologize. It's going to be basically pointing at this piece, this piece, this piece, maybe color by color. We're going to get going. The recoil spring. I'm not going to take out either recoil spring. It's very simple. You can either depress this spring and get this pin right here to pop out on its own, or there are little round cutouts in the back. You pry the spring out, you kind of bend the spring out through the back, and then you can take those two pins out. It's the same on both sides. I'm not going to mess with doing that right now. Alright, first off, this little spring right here, all you have to do is pop it. Wait, I'm going to do this with my finger. Sorry, my hands are so fat. You just take it and pry it over. It's just resting on top of this little silver piece. Take it, take the tension off of it. It pops off of this post, and the rest of it, that flat part right here, is actually stuck in the back of the slide stop lever. So we'll get to that next. So that's my next step, as I then take off the slide stop lever. You just kind of wiggle that out. See, pulls right out, and that's actually the pivot bar for the trigger. So we've got that out now, and then we go to this side, and there's another small little spring right there, and it rests underneath. There's a little groove on the back side of this bar. All you need to do, is get your flathead screwdriver. You can see it sets up underneath there. Just kind of lift it out, and it pops back down and around. You don't have to take this one off the post. This post has actually got more of a flat head on and it holds that spring on better. Just resting it right there, you're going to be fine. We need to be able to take all this apart now and get these pieces out. So we'll start with taking the hammer out. So we need to release the tension on the mainspring. The magazine release, and I'm sorry if you hear a bunch of noise in the background. Gus, the bulldog, is at my feet wanting some attention. So you just push this up, and there's two little tabs right there on either side that rest in this little slot, and you just need to push up with your thumb on that, and it just rests right there. So you take your mag release button off, and then slide this off, and then of course you drop the spring on the ground, but the main spring fits over that, which is basically a hammer strut. I'm basically using 1911 parts because, or part names, because I don't know what else to really call them. So once you've taken the pressure off the hammer, this big pin here, and you can just use, I don't know, I'm going to use that spring. You can just push it out, and it falls out just like a 1911 pin. And then your hammer can come out. Now there's also two plates in the back there. This one goes on the right side of the hammer, and this one goes on the left side of the hammer. and you can see they're different size holes. It's got a small hole on the left and a bigger hole on the right. The one on the right is what the pin sits on. So these are actually on either side of the hammer, and you can tell which one goes up because I know these are black and it probably won't show up, but the top of these are both shiny and polished because that's what the slide and the barrel kind of, not necessarily the barrel, but that's what the slide, it rubs across the top of there and polishes that up. So you've got those. Next up, this extractor is spring loaded and it's held in place by this pin, which also holds on this silver piece, and this bar right here. So what we're going to do is, again, I just take this little spring head and you can push, it comes right out, kind of like the sear pin on a 1911. Oop. Do that, and of course every time it happens to me, the ejector comes out, and that's a little spring, sits down basically in the mag well. So you get that, and then you want to get this bar off, and I don't know if you can see inside there, but that little bar has a pin basically on the other side that goes through the trigger. I just kind of get my flat pry bar underneath there and well, go from in here, and you can pop that off. Well, of course it's not going to do it for me now. Alrighty, I just hold the trigger in place, and it's what's holding, it's there we go. I apologize. So that's loose now, and you can see there's a pin right there. All you have to do is kind of get that back up in that little groove, and this little silver piece will rotate and it comes off. But if you see, there's a little post on there, and it's got a little, I don't know if you're going to be able to see that, it's got a little notch in the top of it, and that notch, because now we can pull the trigger out, that little notch sits in that little hole there of the trigger and holds it in place, and that when the trigger moves, this little post rides in this oval shaped cutout, and it allows this bar to go back and forth, kind of like on a Beretta. And then the little silver piece, you can rotate it up and slide it right out, and there you go, you've got a disassembled frame. There is the takedown lever, which if you look, and I know you probably can't see it, but in this little hole right there, let's see if I can hold that. Right in that center hole right there, you can see the spring. Oop, I'm losing it. The spring, if you depress that spring, it holds back the detent and will allow this to pull out. That and the main spring, or that and the recoil springs, are the only thing left on here. I'm not going to worry about it. So let's go ahead and put it back together. You've got this silver piece here. Stick it through the frame. Stick it through the frame. Rotate it down a little bit. Stick your trigger back down in the slot. Let it drop in there. And then you need to get this bar underneath that little silver piece. That's how it rides in there. And then stick that post back to the oval slot to get into the trigger, and then just stick it until you hear it pop. Like, I don't know if you heard that click or not. Now that's in there, and basically what happens is it allows that bar, when you move the trigger, it rotates in and out of there. Okay, so we've got that in there. Now we need to put the extractor and ejector and that pin back in. So we take, an easy way to do this is take this pin and get it started. See if I can get a good angle. Get it started in that hole. And I like to push it all the way through and get it set in there. And then what you can do is you can take your pin and push it back just enough to where you can see daylight. Oh, you see this slot right here? That's where the ejector sits into, and you can stick it down in there, and then you can push your pin the rest of the way in once you've got it in place. And so you just put pressure on that pin as you slide this down that channel, and it pops back in, and it's ready to go. So next, let's put back the put the hammer back in, and when you do that, when you put the hammer back in, you see how it's got this little piece and that claw. You need to make sure when you stick it in there, that that claw gets underneath that silver piece. So, and then we need to get these two plates on either side. I just get the hammer in there and I drop that in, and I get my hammer pin and I just get it started. You can look through there and line it up and get that first piece in there. Well, I'll make a liar of myself. I got fat hands. Get that first piece in there, maybe, there we go, and then rotate the hammer up till you get the hammer through there, and then you need this last piece. And remember, the big hole goes down, the little hole sticks up, the shiny part is up. Stick it on the other side of the hammer in there, and you may have to back that pin out if it falls in too far, which mine did. Get that to line up, and then push that pin the rest of the way through, and now it's all in there. Take your hammer strut and your mainspring and stick those back up in there. It just sets in there. I mean, it can only go, there's a little spot in the bottom of the hammer, but when you stick it there, it has to go in the right place. There's not like you have to find a special hole or anything like that. Get your mag release, put pressure on it. Well, making a liar out of myself. There we go. Well, I had to get it in the right spot, and then just put pressure. That snaps back into the. Well, it's got my finger. Oh, that hurt. Let me do that again so you can see. Once you've got the hammer strut in the right place and that there, just take your thumb basically, put pressure forward, and it locks into those little. Oh, I missed it again. There we go. Get that set up. Put pressure forward, and those little nubs lock into that, and we're basically done. We've got two more pieces to add in. You want to take your slide stop and basically just align the holes with the trigger. You can move it with your finger. It's no big deal. I kind of just pull the trigger back and down a little bit, get it started, and then your trigger's in, or your slide stop is in. And the last piece is this little spring that I've been using as a pin the whole time, and you just need to stick the straight edge into the back of the slide stop. There's a little hole in there. Put the spring over the post like that. It's stuck in the back of the slide stop, and then just use your finger, rotate that up right above under that piece, and it just sits right in there perfectly, and you're good to go. Put the grips back on. Remember, there's a little groove in that grip there. It sticks behind the slide stop. Put your screw in, get it going. Tighten that down. And then the big test. Put it back together. Again, you gotta push the extractor down. Lock it back. Flip your lever. Let's see if everything works right. Well, the hammer stayed back. If we depress the trigger, well, hang on, what am I doing wrong? Well, I didn't do something right, did I? The decocker works. Oh, I know exactly what I did. I didn't put the spring back on the back side of this. Let's take this apart real quick. Oh, I can't get the hammer to drop now. Let's take these grips off. Oh, exactly what I did. Here's what I forgot to do. I forgot to put this spring back where it belongs, and that's why it won't allow that trigger bar to move. So there's a little hook on this side that literally just catches the inside of the mag well and it sticks there, and this one rotates under, and there's a little groove in the bottom of that bar that spring sticks into. Now I bet you everything works now. So just so I don't put the grips back on, got it back. Okay, now if I depress the trigger worked. Now double action, it's working. If I just cock it, everything works. Trigger, perfect. Cock it, put it on safe, decocker works. Nothing happens when you pull the trigger. Put it back on fire, everything works. There we go. One little mishap, you got to remember to put all your springs back in the right place so you can make everything function properly. Okay, again, put the grips on. And again, like I said, I haven't done this too many times. I apologize for the hiccup. Everything works great. Hope this video is informative to somebody. Again, I apologize for the length and for the fumbling around, but it's as best I could do.